Hey everybody, what's up out there? And welcome to another episode of Connect with the Nurse. Last week, in case you didn't get to check out last week's episode, we talked about maintaining self care. And so this is simply part two from where we left off on last week. And today's episode is going to be titled Self Love. So, I had a guest on with me last week and we covered a lot of great things. So, if you didn't get to take a look at that, check it out because it's a good episode. A lot of good topics were covered in there. And so, today I have a counselor on board with me, and I'm super excited about that. Somebody who kind of specializes in self love and can go in depth with that with us on today. And so I have none other than my daughter joining me today, Miss Ashlyn. So I'm going to let her give you a little bit of kind of inside detail on herself.
Okay, so I am, as she said, I am Ashlyn Monk. I am a group leader with Positive Changes, Counseling and Consulting, PLLC. I have also been doing motivational speaking since 2019. I have dealt with topics such as self love, self care, self appreciation, the journey of the process. Any topics that you can think of, me versus me, I have crossed it and dealt with it. So it's a little bit about me.
All right, I'm super excited. Guys, Ashlyn got her master's in December of last year, and so amazingly proud of her. And when I tell you she excels in what she does, leaving out all the personals from being my daughter, but I tell you she excels in what she does. I see her moving and talking and engaging, and so I was like, you know what, it's super fitting today to bring her in on part two of this episode because you cover a lot of things, and there's quite a bit of things that can go on when I think that sometimes, as we talked about last week, just knowing and realizing what those things are makes a difference. And so I wanted to go in even deeper today because we mentioned, things like self care and self awareness on last week. And with all of that, I feel like you close it out with self love, knowing how to have self love, knowing what that looks like, what that feels like, what is that built up on, what are the stats around self love. And so I want Ashlyn to really cover some deep thoughts with us today from a counselor and therapeutic standpoint. And so, Ash, I would ask you basically, what are your thoughts in like your overall aspects of self love?
Well, my perspective on it is that I'm a deep advocate for self love. Over the years, I have kind of developed maybe like a love hate relationship with it only because I felt like I was always talking about this topic, but then I realized that I keep running into people that are having an issue with self love, that a lot of the problems that they face and a lot of challenges that they face has to do with the aspect of self love. And I teach my clients this. I also tell my people who come to me for my workshops and things of that nature that we have to take it from the internal to the external, not the external to the internal. Okay. Because when you start to really progress internally, the things that you see externally start to change. Versus if you try to do it externally, you start to change different things, but you're still not changing who you are. That's going to cause a problem because it'll cause a rift. But when you take it from the internal to the external, you'll see more changes that you want to see, period, when you're dealing with the aspect of self-love.
I like that. Really good. So for me, when you start like changing who you are, how are some ways that as an individual, because we tend to deal with so much in life, and like I say all the time, you got to identify with those issues in order to start making some changes. So with that, how would you say we could change those things about us and how we are?
Understanding who you are. I think you have to have the time for yourself, to yourself. And it's a bit difficult to say this because
Mm-hmm.
I understand that when I'm saying this, you have the people that don't want to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
You have the people that's not okay with being alone,
Mm-hmm.
and they rather have somebody. But this is something that I teach all the time. You wake up with you, you go to bed with you, you go to sleep with yourself, you do all of that. So it is important to understand that before you can do anything else, you have to be right within first, because not being right within starts to affect relationships. And so when we're saying, okay, well, how do we get ourselves together? How do we do this? How do we do that? Start figuring out who you are. And the ways to do that is really to start looking within yourself. What are my likes? What are my dislikes? And even going beyond that, what's my trauma? How is this affecting the way I talk to people? And it's not to say that you have to say to somebody, oh, I go through this, I go through that, but you have to be real with yourself. And you have to say, okay, this is my trauma, this is what I face. I have a problem communicating my emotions. Because I know I have a problem communicating my emotions, I tend to shut down. So knowing that, okay, I might need to journal.
Okay.
I might need to journal. If I'm journaling, and let's just go with the relationship part of it. A significant other, a mom, a sister, a brother, it doesn't matter who it is. If I'm journaling, then that means I'm also processing my emotions. And when I'm processing my emotions, I'm able to at least say something versus saying nothing. And I'm an advocate for self-dates.
Y'all, this is so crazy because she did not know where we were coming from on last week when we did our first episode, and I was talking about not minding to be out there and do some things by yourself. Catch a movie, go on a date, get a massage. I say that all the time because I think that as people, we always have a tendency to think, oh, you gotta have a lot of people with you, and so she's so right on that. I can say that because she takes herself on dates, things by herself, and same thing with me, because I feel like it helps you to identify with you. You were going in so deep that I was like sucked in. And that's why I asked her to come on this episode, because I was like, I'm on camera, but at the same time, she does that. That's what I love about her, because she really goes in deep. And so, guys, I got a couple of her cards that she kind of uses for her own day-to-day, because when I tell you, it's so amazing to see people walk in their call and in that realm for which they know that they were, cut out to do. I'm going to cover a couple of things on here, but this is some stuff because it's even some things that I feel like will really help all of us. But Ash, on here, on one of these cards, it says, what 5 things can I do today to recharge and rest? So what would you tell us? What are some things that we can do to recharge and rest?
I'm going to say this very lightly when I say this, because I don't think this is a generational thing. I think now it's a people thing, because we are so kind of in tune to our phones and things of that nature. I would definitely say manage social media time. Manage that, because that's very important. Because if you're not conscious of it, you can find yourself, okay, I'm going to sleep, I'm waking up, first thing I do, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube. True. Anything. Just be aware of that. Be aware of that. My mom can tell you I'm an advocate for naps. And I know some people don't like to nap, but I also realize that resting is not just a nap sometimes. Sometimes you just need to lay down. And that's okay.
I agree.
That's okay to do. For people who can't lay down, meditate. Meditate before you actively start your day, or meditate at night. Read a book. Something that says, okay, I'm having this downtime for myself. Spend time with people that you love too, because sometimes that's needed. Sometimes it's needed to surround yourself with that love, because even though you're pouring into yourself, you still need people to pour into you.
I like that. So basically, learning how to pull back from social media, and not only for me, not only just social media, it's the whole outside world. And I say that again, learning how to be able to say no. And you said like getting some rest, which is a lot of stuff that people don't always do. Stopping to say, that body needs sleep, and especially when we get older. But it used to be a time when you thought that everything was when you get older, but now in the youngest generation, the world is so fast paced. Our younger children and offspring and people who we see out here in the world are moving so fast, just trying to keep up. It's like a hamster on a wheel. Did I get everything done today? Have I done everything that I need to do today? And so learning how to say stop, I gotta rest, I think is everything. Really, really strong point there. She mentioned reading a book and things like that, meditating. It's, oh my gosh, it's nothing like a bath with the candles and chilling out, and even a shower. It doesn't even have to be a bath, but it's a shower. Throwing some shower steamers in there and just letting it float up, and you just closing your eyes and just relaxing and meditating and letting it go. I tell you what, it's a great feeling when you can activate that. It's about activating those things that are around us that kind of help us to be better. And I think you really did good pulling that out and making sure that we are aware of those things that we can channel in on. And so with that, I would ask with self-love, because to me, in my opinion, and you can kind of jump in with that, to me, knowing who you are determines a lot about self-love, because you have so many people who when any of us are doing something in life, be it positive or negative, so many people have so many things to say. And a lot of times I feel like so many people have so many things to say, not always in the best aspect of what we would prefer, because they have not really identified with who they are. And because somebody else has identified with who they are, it's like, oh, she's doing this or he's doing that, or you're doing too much of this or doing too much of that. And so I think identifying with who you are, so that you know what you want as the person. Nobody knows better than, first of all, God, because I love the Lord, and whoever your personal being is, an innermost spirit. But I feel like channeling in with him gives us a sense of purpose, so that you can hone in on who you are, what your goals are. And I said this before, a lot of what I do in life is setting goals. I feel like when I set goals, I'm setting precedents for what I want to do. And that really helps me to know, did I meet the goal? Have I gotten to where I need to be at? And so I would like to ask you another question.
Okay.
All right. So with that, I want to know, what would someone's life be like if they could create anything or be anyone? And then how would it change their life?
So I would honestly say that's a really out of the box question, and the reason why it's an out of the box question is because a lot of people have put limitations on their life.
Yeah.
So to say, okay, what would my life be like if it was like this? What would my life be like if I was like this? And some people are not risk takers.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that I've done this topic called From Our Greatest Enemies to Our Greatest Supporters. And we have to be our greatest supporters. And within being our greatest supporters, it's understanding the way we hold ourselves captive. And it's understanding the limitations that we put on ourselves. So when people have relinquished those limitations, or you have relinquished the idea that society has put on you, you become a different version of yourself.
That's good.
And if there was a topic on one of my cards, and the topic was just kind of like, if I could do anything without any judgment, what would I do? Or who would I be?
I like it.
And I literally stopped and I was like, ooh. I was like, I don't know how to answer this question. And then I thought to myself, I said, I am truly living my life for me. So I have no answer because I'm doing what I want.
You always see, and I'm going to see if you remember what you tell me a lot. You, when we're talking, you'll say, Mama, you know I'm what?
I'm a free spirit.
There you go. I was just trying to see if she was going to remember.
I'm a free spirit.
Yeah.
And I was going to talk about that because literally, I'm like, when you said, you set goals, you do all of this, you do all of that. And I'm like, I literally remember we were out of town and I had told my brother, I said, you're not like a risk taker type of person. Like, you're not gonna want to go on the roller coaster. I'm gonna want to go on the roller coaster. And that's when he had to tell me kind of who I was, in a sense of I hadn't really put a name on it yet.
Yeah.
And he was just like, you're a living a moment type of person. And I love me a good Fast and Furious movie. And Vin Diesel said after one of the Fast and Furious movies, I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Okay.
And that's exactly how I live my life.
Yeah.
And so, of course, and you can attest to this, to my parents, it's going to seem unorthodox. It's going to seem like I might be moving without a plan, though they know I always have a plan, but my plan might not be as structured because I'm also like, okay, if I want to do it, I'm going to do it. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. But I'm also conscious of the movements that I make and the steps that I take, because at the end of the day, I never want to wake up being like, well, what if I did this? What if I didn't do this? I try to live life without regrets.
Okay. How would you tell somebody who is struggling with self-love how to attain and, I would say, attach self-love to their innermost being? How would you guide somebody to that?
When I first started the journey of self-love and I first started talking about it in a workshop, I came up with this saying that said, you'll never know how much you love yourself until there's no one there to tell you how you should feel about you.
I like it.
So to answer your question, disassociation.
Okay, so like disassociation from what?
You need to know how you feel about you.
Okay.
If that means that you're unknowingly seeking for the validation of the people around you, or you're seeking validation from the things that you do. For example, you can get so attached to accomplishments that sometimes you can be like, I'm not enough if I'm not accomplishing something. So therefore, find the time to say, I don't have to have a graduation to know that I'm somebody.
I like it.
I don't have to hear somebody tell me, oh, you're very pretty, to know that I'm pretty. I don't have to have somebody tell me I'm a good person to know I'm a good person. Because of my intentions pure.
I like it.
Start to understand who you are. I did this workshop on choosing me, choosing you. And I had someone ask me a question in a sense of, when you start choosing yourself, people start to kind of be like, oh, you're being selfish. And they start, naming you bad names and things of that nature. And they was just kind of like, well, how do you get through that? And I said, you have to understand, when you start being more disciplined with who you are and you start choosing you, people are going to be upset.
Absolutely.
And you have to be okay with that.
Oh my gosh, Ashlyn, I so agree with that. Being okay. Self-love is about being okay when it's not okay. And knowing that there are, she's so spot on with that. Girl, I just tell you, she's so spot on with that, because there comes some times when so many things come after us. And so many things are like running an attack on you for whatever reason, for whatever the purpose is. And that's a strong point where she said, be okay with yourself. Self-love is about being okay with the innermost being, which is yourself. And I say this again and again and again, identifying with you. Knowing you, nobody can know you better than you. And I say this all the time when things tend to make me upset. You know my motto. I always say you can't people start to say some things and tell you what you should think and how you should feel, and I'll say you can't be more upset than me.
Yeah.
You can't. It's not possible. It's my dilemma.
Because I'm the one that's going through it.
Exactly.
Yes.
So and so pulling in that self-love and that innermost being, it's just spot on for knowing, like I said, who you are. And it's amazing, like she said, those are those types of things that can change your life. Changing your life is about being able to identify with you in your life, because nobody can be that life changer better than you can be that life changer, and better than we can be that life changer. Knowing what we want and obtaining the fullest out of it, going for it, like you said, being free spirited, because you talk about being free spirited a lot. And so when you talk about free spirit, what are some aspects of free spirit for those who are like, what is she meaning when she says free spirit? What are some aspects in that?
Free spirit is understanding that if it's something that I want to do, I'm not putting myself in a box to not do it. I'll give the prime example of the story that my parents love to tell me. When I was a child and it was Little League, and I cheered for Little League as a child, and nobody was on the field cheering, and it was sleeting. But I wanted to get out there and I wanted to cheer. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that they was looking at me like,
what's going on?
She gotta be crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm like, show must go on. We came to do something, and that's what we gonna do.
Yeah.
And that's the type of person that I am. If I want it, I'm gonna go get it.
I like that.
If I don't want it, you're not gonna see me do it. My brother once told me that when I was going off to college, I remember y'all were having a conversation, and he said, you won't have to worry about me being peer pressured, because if I don't want to do it, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, that's good. And that, you just hit something right there in being under peer pressure too, because that's a whole nother episode all by itself. And a lot of times, even as grown adults, we do feel pressured by things when other people are saying things, or seeing somebody who might have something that we don't have, or relationships that look like they are not what they appear to be. Because let's talk about it. Social media, we put a lot of stuff out on social media, but then no one knows the personals that's behind the doors of social media. You put out there what you want people to say, and then some people put out there with some things that we don't need to see. And so I think knowing who you are and being able to identify with that self-love helps you from falling into those categories, keeps you from falling into those categories. Let me rephrase that, because you kind of learn by looking, you learn by experience. And so when we're seeing that and when we're doing that, we realize, hey, you know what? I don't have to worry about what somebody else is saying. I think I'm going to have to do what's best for me on this one. And I think I'm going to have to do what's comfortable for me on this one, because everybody's not living in those shoes. And so with that, I think it just pulls out a lot and helps us to develop a sense of respect for ourselves. And I think that's the main thing. Also with self-love is being able to develop respect for yourself.
Oh yes, that is a big thing, because it's understanding that you have to be so protective of yourself that it's like, I'm not letting everybody and their mama come to my doorstep. And it's understanding that you have to be aware of the things that you do. You have to be aware of the things that the people that's around you are doing. And it's like, for my prime example, no disrespect to nobody that go to clubs. I don't have no problem with nobody that go to clubs. Then they are fun. I'm just not a club goer. And that's just me, because I know who I am in the sense of, oh, okay, it's going to look kind of strange. You see your therapist, motivational speaker in the club. You kind of going to be like, why are you here? Like, it is understanding that, there's a not even so much as an image, because you're gonna have to be who you are regardless. But it's understanding, okay, the message that I want to send out and stuff like that. And I think one valuable piece that I definitely want to say is that understanding that when you get self-love, it's not a thing where, oh, I have it and now everything is okay.
Yeah.
No. You're going to have to love yourself when you're 25, when you're 35, when you're 45, when you're 55, when their body start changing, when your mind is starting to shift in different ways, when you don't want to wear the same thing that you used to wear no more, when you start to say, okay, now I'm changing friend circles, you're going to have to love yourself through every single last stage in life, and that's going to look different. You don't love yourself how you loved yourself at 45.
Yeah.
You don't love yourself how you loved yourself at 25. It's different.
That's
and
true.
It's understanding that you have to grow with that. But it's the foundation that you need. You have to have a foundation in general. Because a lot of times that I see is that people will get sucked into relationships.
Yeah.
And you didn't love yourself to begin with.
Wow.
Now you're getting out of relationships. Trying to find who you never found.
Yeah.
And that's always a problem there. Because it gets harder from there.
Or even going back into a relationship before having the time to heal from, you know, that
from previous
relationship. And so, with that, before we wrap up, I just want to know, how does somebody know their true passion? Because this is another question. How does somebody know their true passions? And then when you know those true passions, what are some activities that can put you in the zone?
True passions. I'm thinking of how complex human beings are, because human beings are very complex, and I know there are some people that will go off to college and still don't actually know what they want to do in life.
Yeah.
And that's a very complex question, but I will say it in the most simplest terms. What makes you happy?
That's good.
What makes you happy, and can you see yourself doing it for a long time?
Okay.
If you can't see yourself doing it for a long time, well, you might need to X that off the list.
Yeah.
But what makes me happy? And I used to say this, I was reminded of this statement that I used to say some time ago, and it was, do what you want to do. If you want to go sell magnets, you better be the best dang on magnet seller that you can be. Because a lot of people are going to look at you and be like, oh, they selling magnets, they doing this, they doing this. When I was in school, it was a magnet that you put on the back of your phone, and it was like a poppy magnet. But what the magnet would do is, if you wanted to sit your phone up and watch TV, it would have like something on the back of it that you could actually like, you've seen them.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought those were stupid. I really did. I was like, okay, this is dumb. People are really spending $5 on this. But however, those magnets sold. And I am proud of the person that made those magnets, because they was the best dang on magnet seller that they could be.
Yeah.
And it was a whole lot of me's probably telling them, don't do that. But they did what they wanted to do.
They did what they wanted, absolutely.
And that's what's important.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I would say. Figure out what makes you happy. What brings you joy.
So figuring out what brings you joy and what makes you happy kind of puts you more into the zone of what you were called to do and what you like to do.
Yes, that in a sense of, okay, well, what am I going to do in this lifetime? You know, can I do this for a long time? And then understanding your own creative process.
Okay.
Because for me, like I said, there's a reason why I can't go into certain environments, and it's just because with me creating for motivational speaking and me having to make sure my house is in order to help my clients, there are certain environments I can't go into because it does stunt my growth with that.
Sure. Not promoting a good atmosphere and things like that. I get that, definitely. Wow, Ash, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I've enjoyed having you on today. This has been so super exciting. Guys, I definitely hope that you have enjoyed today's episode. Again, check out last week's episode so that you can tie that into how we got here today. If you have not liked and or subscribed, please hit that like and subscribe, and we will see you back on next week. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Thank you.